Hello, everyone. I am Andy Ortiz, a reporter here at The Wrap and secretly Batwoman. Probably wasn't supposed to tell you, gonna do it anyway. Not great at the secret identity thing. We are so happy to have you here for our 2021 Power Women Summit. Today, as part of our How to Be a Superhero in Real Life panel, we are joined by some incredible women. From Supergirl, we have Ozzy Tesfaye and Nicole Maynes. From Batwoman, we have Nicole Kang. And from The Beautiful Liar, although you might immediately recognize her as Stevie from Schitt's Creek, we have Emily Hampshire. Hello, everyone. How are you guys?
So good.
Excited.
Everyone's like, she came out really, really strong on this. I don't know how I'm gonna match this. It's gonna be a good time. I'm so very excited to be talking to you guys today. I want to start with the important stuff. Obviously, name of this panel is How to Be a Superhero in Your Real Life. So tell me, what is the secret, guys? I'm like fine with being bitten by a spider. I don't do radioactive chemicals. What is the secret here? How do I become a superhero? Who's got it?
Well, that's the trick. It's really hard in this political climate and where we just are socially to find spiders that aren't radioactive but still give powers. And it's like just like a struggle I don't want to have to deal with anymore.
That is not where I thought you were going to go with this. But it's the way we should go.
It's an important conversation that needs to be had.
Is just beware of radioactive spiders at all times. But now for actual serious things, because I'm an actual serious reporter always. I really am happy to be here just because this is such a select club that you guys are in, right? You all play just badass women on screen, superheroes. And I mean, Emily, in your case, it's a little bit of a different medium, but you're still very, very super. Just tell me tell me about this general experience. This is something that so few people can relate to, can understand. So just tell me what it has been like. Nicole, let's start with you.
Which one?
Oh God. See, we knew this was going to happen.
There was a whole conversation about this happening.
We did. We had a whole conversation. Let's start with Nicole Kang, because I consider you super, even though you don't technically have power, although we're going to get into some things, but Mary in general, typically the non-super super. So tell me about this.
Well, I will just start with not all heroes wear capes. Okay. She's a great doctor in Gotham, and she has like her own underground clinic. I think what's super about her is that she's really psyched to be a part of the Bat team, and she's a really vital part of it. And I think her actual whole journey this year is feeling left out, feeling undervalued, feeling left out because she doesn't have a suit or what that means, and like doubting her usefulness or her importance on the team. And then by the end, sort of finding that she's got some really great friends who do need her and have sometimes overlooked her. And so I think for Mary, what it means to be a hero is just kind of her figuring out who she is in Gotham, and within her own sort of coming of age story, trying to be a good person and making some mistakes. But so her hero story is kind of being flipped on its head at the moment is the true answer.
That's true. And we are going to get into it. But before we do, I want to jump over to other Nicole, because come on, we knew that was going to happen, right? So let's go to Nicole Maynes now. Tell me about your experience being a super, on screen and off.
I mean, I have let myself become obsessed with Dreamer. And it's gotten to a point where it's potentially unhealthy, but we're going to deal with that later. I mean, this character has become so personal to me and is just something that means so much to me. And as cheesy as it sounds, and it's like emotions and feelings, I feel like building this character up and bringing her from the show into the comics and building her into the superhero that I know she can be feels like something that I was meant to do. And I mean, I'm just so in love with Dreamer as a character, and getting to play her in live action was so much fun, but getting to write her in the comics is whole nother type of fun. And I mean, I hope I get to continue to do both. But you know, there's more coming down the pipe. Absolutely. I am having so much fun, and there's so much that I cannot wait to just tell people and show people, because getting to see everyone's reaction to Dreamer and everyone adopting her and loving her as much as, well, maybe not as much as I love her.
Not sure it's possible.
Not sure it's possible. It is, you know, just one of the greatest feelings ever. And seeing, I'm obsessed on social media when anyone posts like fan art of Dreamer or like an edit video that they've done. I have to watch it because I'm just like, I love this character and I love getting to see everyone's take on her. And you know, she's, you know, the new superhero on the block. And I just want to show her off to everyone. And I, you know, just, I love her so much. And it's just been a dream come true.
You know, you mentioned creating character for the show. Ozzy, you got to do the same thing. Kelly Olsen was an original. She became Guardian. Tell me about that journey for you, because I know it was especially personal.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll just say there's nothing like putting on your super suit for the first time. It's an experience I didn't think was going to be as emotional, and it is a small club of people that understand what it's like to put on a super suit for your job, and it never gets old, and it's so cool. And we filmed our finale on location, and I remember watching two kids walk by and look at me like I was Santa Claus, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is not normal, and it's so cool. So I'll say that, like, there is something that happens to you when you put on a super suit. I think especially as women, where you put your shoulders back a little bit further and you put your chin up, and my posture's gotten better, and I think my confidence overall has gotten better just by spending months in that suit. And then for me, I wrote the episode in which my character became a superhero. So when I felt empowered by putting that on, it was also empowering for the character and Kelly, and it was very parallel in the experience. So I think being able to create that story was something that, I don't know, it's a dream that I never thought would be possible, and it meant a lot to me, and hopefully the little girls that look like Guardian, it meant a lot to them too. And that's the best part, I think, for all of us in being superheroes, is that like we get to hopefully give visuals to little girls that they can be kick-ass.
Well, what you don't know, Ozzy, is one of those kids that looked at you like you were Santa Claus. That was actually me and a friend.
Is that why you have the mask on? So you're like, I don't know if you, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I'm really trying to not expose myself.
It's me.
The mask will come off, guys. I'm just really kind of living a dream here, being a superhero with super. So like, I just need a few more minutes with it. I think what I
You're rocking it.
Thank you. Nicole Maynes told me earlier that I have the cheekbones for superhero mask, and I'm gonna fly on that for the next week.
You really do.
You do.
Thank you. But obviously, Emily, I don't want to leave you out here, because I'm so excited about your super journey, because you're in such a different medium.
That's what I think is really interesting, especially after you spoke about, you know, the superhero suit. So I think, so my show is a podcast, and I think there's something really special about having a superhero being perceived through like purely audio. And so it kind of strips away all those stereotypical things you could think of a superhero, and it like puts the emphasis on what emotionally makes a superhero, which I think is quite lovely, because you can also, you know, we all want those people we can identify with, and like those people who looked at you like you were Santa Claus. And a lot of the time it's been like white men or white women, or it hasn't been little girls who can see themselves. And so what I think is cool about audio is you can see yourself, you imagine yourself in that role. And I think the thing that's really just interesting about all superheroes in general is that if you look at them, they're all outcasts. They're all people who didn't fit in. And so to bring it back to like superhero in your real life, your superpower ultimately is the thing that makes you different, the thing that's weird about you, the thing that's your superpower. So I think it's kind of cool.
Well, Emily, I'm a little bit obsessed with the fact that it is a podcast because again, it's such a different medium for the superhero genre, but also like my background is in radio. I was a radio personality for a long time. Shocking. I know. I don't.
I
have a
did
voice.
radio dramas when I was a kid with people doing footsteps behind me and slamming doors. So
Yeah, they're really, really cool. And they're an art that I really believe needs to be revived. So was that part of the drawing factor there? Was that like we have a radio, or a podcast superhero story for you and were you just like, yes, dotted line, I'm gonna sign right now?
well, it was Sam Nelson Harris, who's in a band called the X Ambassadors. He has a brother, Casey, who was blind from birth, and they used to listen to all these books on tape and podcasts and radio dramas when they were a kid. Actually, probably not podcasts, that's newer, but and he wanted to write something as part of a companion piece to his album. And so I just got sent these scripts and this letter from him that was so personal and just special that I chose to spend 8 hours in my closet alone recording this podcast for like no money because it was so good. So that was the draw.
I mean, I would do that. If someone asked me right now, Andy, do you want to be part of superhero anything? I would be like, yes, 100%. Don't pay me. I will go sit in my closet and record the voices. It
That's the
feels
right
like an easy
answer. When someone asks you to do a superhero anything, you're like, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have questions. The answer is just yes. But
No follow-up questions.
none, never. But so Emily, in that sense, do you feel like now that you've done it in this format, do you feel like you would transition to screen and join Ozzy and Nicole and doing it?
I would love to be a superhero.
Come on.
I even like have an album of my childhood karate pictures to prove to someone during any audition that I could do it. I really did karate.
Okay, but like straight up, I did the same thing.
Oh my God. Okay. Amazing. So it worked. There's hope for me.
Yep.
It worked.
100%.
That's what's important is save your old karate pictures. And that's the secret, guys. It's not radioactive spiders. It's not chemicals. It's save your old karate pictures.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, put your lighters up if you were a lame karate kid in elementary school. You
Gotta do it.
Oh man. One thing that really also excites me about this panel in particular is the fact that you are all original characters, because Nicole Kang, you also as well. Mary Hamilton, a lot of people think she's going to become, hold on. We choke and we recover and we keep going.
Bless you.
But Nicole Kang, Mary Hamilton is technically an original. A lot of people think she was going to be, my comics knowledge. Come on. Mary Elizabeth Kane, the middle name was Elizabeth, right? A lot of people wanted you to be her, but Mary Hamilton is technically an original. So tell me about coming into that, because obviously when you hear superhero project, you're like, oh, okay, who do I get to play? Like who's the icon? And you get to make her for yourself. So tell me about that.
Yeah, I think I was actually really drawn to the project because, first of all, it takes place in Gotham, which is a place that I really geeked out about. I have a huge attachment to all of the Batman movies, and I saw the character description for Mary Hamilton, and it was like open ethnicity. And then I read the sides, like as you do for an audition, and I thought, oh my God, she fits me like a glove. And and when I spoke about Mary Hamilton, she was going to be an original character, so I thought maybe there's room for somebody who I haven't seen before to be in Gotham. Like maybe there's more wiggle room because she's an original and there aren't any expectations, because she is a combination, yeah, you're right, of Mary Elizabeth Kane and Bet Kane. And she's supposed to be sort of the third step sister, the odd sister. And Caroline Dries and Greg and Sarah just have great imaginations and a lot of trust later. And I think that's actually one of the things that really drew me to the role, because she wasn't specifically Asian. She wasn't specifically any actually identity, which then begs the question of who is she? And that's a really enticing creative process for me to go on. And it's been one I've been scared at times, been nervous at times, and been really, really humbled by everybody's really welcome arms. I will say that about this superhero universe. For the most part, it is cool. It's like, well, nobody's skin is green, so nobody's skin is blue, or nobody does that. So I think that it's a great heightened form of imagining the world that we want to see and telling the stories that we want to tell, and being in a bit of control of that is a very, very exciting thing. So yeah, for sure.
I mean, I'll say it. Mary is probably my favorite on Batwoman. I think I can comfortably say she is my favorite.
Oh my gosh!
After being with the show for 2.5, we're in our third season now. I've put thought into this, Nicole, but I think
we were all
nice. I'm gonna like Venmo you that 20 channel.
We were saying that Rachel Scarsden was all our favorites as well. Though,
yeah, come on.
Yeah, so
I was part of that conversation. I love Rachel, but I love many people on that cast. So I'm not doing what Andy's doing right now. That's dangerous.
I know. I'm gonna get in trouble.
Yeah, I'm like that's a great cast of humans that I love. So.
I like to be bold, Ozzy. I like to say what I'm thinking.
More power to you.
I love Mary as a character too, so I love her too.
Well, and in the spirit of saying what I'm thinking, I don't know how you guys work in these all day long. My goodness, it is just right on the head. I am
smile.
sweaty.
You can't hold your cheeks.
Yeah.
It's all for the cheekbones, actually.
It is all for the cheekbones. But continuing in that vein, an original character, Nicole Maynes, it's funny with Nia because you are an original. Nia is not she wasn't in the comics. She is now. But she is related to someone who was in the comics. So you kind of got to be like a spin-off version of Neuronal and your own thing. So what was the process in creating Nia?
Yeah, so it started with reading just a ton of Legion of Superheroes comic books. And so DC sent me up this whole big box and they'd like put little sticky note tabs in different stories and volumes that they were like, this is a really good Nura story. This is really great. And so I read everything I could about Dream Girl and Naltor, and I immersed myself in everything that had to do with, and I read a lot about in one of the continuities where Dream Girl was in a relationship with Brainiac, and I saw what that dynamic looked like, and I wanted Nia to kind of serve as something that could be kind of like point A, and Nura being kind of point B, and you can see how, okay, yeah, maybe like when this character masters her powers, maybe she'll be something a little bit more like Nura. And so in Nura's, she has this smart wit about her, and she's stylish, and she's a little sassy, and she's great. And so for Nia, I wanted her to have all of those elements, maybe not quite fully realized yet. And then of course, as it is with any character, the more I played with her and the more episodes we did, she just sort of went in her own direction away from who Neuronal originally is. And so now, existing in the comic books as a fully fledged dreamer, she is her own character, and you can see starkly how those two are different and alike, but different.
Have you quite processed the fact that like you are responsible for inserting her in the comics? Like she now exists for forever for all these future comic readers because you brought her into existence on Supergirl, and then you continued her storyline in DC Pride. Like how I just feel like we need to take a moment and like discuss that.
You know, it's weird because I haven't really given myself time properly to be like, I did a really great thing, because I've just been so like, okay, what are we doing next? Where's she going? What's up? Who? I've been on the phone. I've been like staking like DC's offices out. Like I have like a whole like little station I've set up outside there. And really it's just become a matter of, they say yes to me to get me to leave.
Relatable. That's how I live my life.
The secret is to be annoying. But
How do you think I got this moderating job?
You do what works. But I mean, it's been so much fun, and I am so proud to have been, and it's something that I'm honestly more proud of than anything else I've done, because this is really something that I manifested myself. My agents didn't help me. I didn't have, family tagging along or anything. Like, I came up with this idea. I spoke to DC and I was like, I have an idea. I want to do this. And I went to the meetings and I pitched the things, and it became what it was. But so there's some other stuff that I originally pitched that people still haven't seen. Yeah, now we're working on, where I am working on learning to give myself credit. I am working on some new Dreamer stuff, some new Nia stuff. There's a difference with DC that we just teased last week. So really, really excited for people to learn more about that, because I'm having a blast.
I'm really sitting here trying to manifest a Nia appearance over on Batwoman, because I feel like Mary and Nia, come on, the sass between you two, come on.
Thrive.
Listen, well, this is the thing I've been telling everybody with Dreamer. She has a power set that makes sense for her to appear anywhere. She can just pop up and be like, hey gang, I had a vision, something crazy going down, I'm here to help. Let's do this.
This is it. This is what we're putting out into.
Dreamer is ready and waiting.
I'm ready.
You know that meme of Tiffany Pollard where she's just like sitting on the bed fully dressed in the corner waiting?
You.
That's how I feel about Dreamer. Like, I feel like in the suit.
Waiting. Here, I'll just be here.
Totally. I'm like, checking the phone.
That's me before any Zoom. Just waiting.
You're waiting.
God, I'm choking so much today, you guys. Okay. Emily, your character in The Beautiful Liar, you are Shadow, which just really cool name. I had to censor myself there. Really freaking cool name. And it's just a really cool character. It's this blend of comedy, which you excel at. And then there's this edge, this darkness to her. Just tell me, how much fun did you have playing this character? Because I was cracking up listening to her.
So much fun, because the minute I found out that I am the voice inside of this teenage girl's head, who is that voice that we all kind of have that tells us, don't say that thing, people won't like you, or don't do this. But you realize that voice is trying to protect you. Once you go through a lot of expensive therapy, you realize that voice is trying to protect you from things that hurt. And so it's interesting to make that thing personified as somebody, because then I started to think about, well, what would that person be like? And really needy to not let you not listen to me anymore. So I also am obsessed with things like Drop Dead Fred, which none of you will probably know, but it's a really old movie about an imaginary friend, and any kind of I had an imaginary friend that my parents thought was real, and they went to meet her parents, and her parents didn't exist because she didn't exist. So I just love that world, but also just because, this is new. I just want to say that if anyone wants to know, can I play a superhero?
She can.
Okay.
She can.
There we go. That's a Dirty Dancing poster in the back. So. Okay.
Incredible. That was amazing, Emily. I'm so glad you pulled that up. I really want to know, what was your invisible friend's name or imaginary?
I want to unpack the invisible friend too.
You know what's crazy is that her name was Christy Alley, and that is an actress but it wasn't from that. So it might have been my dad listened to Cheers or something and I heard it, but her name was Christy Alley, but I just called her Christy to my parents. So they thought that this friend Christy that I'm saying, they should meet her parents. And anyways.
And then cut to, it's fully Christy Alley.
Yeah.
Yeah, plot twist. Emily, yeah, Kirstie Alley.
She's been there.
That's so funny.
She just knew how to make strategic exits, so she made people think she was imaginary, is what happened.
Yes.
For what it's worth, I had an imaginary / invisible pet. I had a pet tiger, because Aladdin, obviously. And I did actually convince myself at one point that he was real, because I went and I was in my bathroom one day and I looked down at my tub and I swear to God, I saw a little shadowy like paw print. I was so convinced. I was like, I did it. I made him real. I have a pet tiger. I'm still upset.
Now, I don't want to raise any alarms, but that might have been a demon.
Might have been. So while I avoid thinking about my personal demons, Ozzy, let's talk about we're not going to talk about your demons, but we're going to talk about you as Kelly Olsen, also an original character. Like you said, you got to write her origin story, and that's huge. People I don't think quite process how huge it is that you got to write your own origin story. You got to bring in parts of your life as Ozzy. How hard was that? Like, genuinely, how hard was that?
It was hard. I think only because it was such a personal experience and personal episode, and I made her superhero coming out story based in the darkest moments of my personal life, and a lot of the words she said in that were things that I felt or said before myself. There was a lot of like voice note recording in my apartment in Vancouver, crying, and then my neighbors must think I'm crazy, but like then transcribing it and then Kelly saying it. So the lines were very murky, I think, in me becoming a superhero, because I wrote it from so much of like things I've struggled with and finding strength from that. So it was very cathartic, because I was unpacking a lot of my own weaknesses, insecurities, frustrations, maybe not being seen or heard, and then using that to find her power. The fake it till you make it. Like I was playing a character that was processing things that I was exploring and writing. So it wasn't
too much hero in your own life.
That is so amazing.
Thanks, ladies.
Emily brought it back before I could, but I was going to get there.
Oh, yeah. So it was, a very public form of therapy, pretty much is what that was. But yeah, it was. Look, I still, the fact that I wrote an episode of our show, and the fact that it ended up being, the Guardian, and a woman has never played the Guardian before. And then my suit I helped design, and I got to do a half helmet, and I got to give her braids, and I got to do all these things that felt very meaningful and personal in what I hoped, if I were to ever be a superhero, the visibility of the character as a Black woman and what that's going to mean. I've always been very mindful of where it lands and who it's for. And so none of that was ever lost on me. The hardest part was like midway through when they're like, an actor has never done this before. And I was like, I don't need that kind of pressure in my life, because
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I was like, I'm happy to be the first, but I don't want to be the last. So I want to make sure I don't mess this up.
Yeah, they can maybe keep that pressure to themselves.
I was like, you could have midway through.
Just hand her a coffee and tell her she's doing great.
Yeah.
Bold decision to be halfway through. That's really mind-boggling.
He assumed I knew, but I don't look things up. I'm very much like an ignorance is bliss person, and I tend to always think I can do anything. My mother empowered me with that as a young girl, and then I get like 80% in, and I'm like, oh, this is hard. And people are like, you didn't think it was going to be hard to write an episode of a television show? And I'm like,
and star in it.
Star in it, and yeah.
How did it come about for you to do that, to be able to write your whole character?
Yeah, I mean, I had a really productive pandemic, I guess I could say. I mean, I like cried and questioned my life and did all those things that everyone else did.
As you do.
Yeah, but I started writing, and there were stories that I was wanting to tell, specifically in general, and then with the character on the show in particular, and and a voice of it. And so I hired a writing coach over the year, and I just worked with her, and it was so great. And I ended up writing a Supergirl spec script and sent it to my showrunners, more just like, here, this is a storyline idea. And they really liked it, and sent it off to Warner Brothers, and they really liked it. And they were like, well, it was kind of, okay. And then when we found out it was our last season, and they had to re-break the whole season, so that wasn't going to happen. But they were like, we're still giving you an episode. It'll just be something brand new that you'll do. And then they were like, it's actually going to be your superhero coming out story.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
I really just like admire your initiative. I feel like a lot of people say that they want to do so many things, but you just like followed through and did that. And that's, I think, probably the most impressive part about it for me.
You are.
Yeah, that's like Nicole Maynes, like your story of pitching it and going, like, I read this article that Greta Gerwig was speaking in about how she felt like she never felt like she was qualified enough to direct, and she'd done every single job and realized that, like I had guy director friends who had never done anything and were just like, oh, I want to direct a movie. And they went and did it. And Greta Gerwig was talking about that sense of entitlement doesn't come naturally to most women. And so to hear these stories of women taking initiative to put their idea out there, like I know so many times as a younger actor, I would give my idea to the showrunner or to the writer and let them have it so they could say it. So I would get to do the thing, but I'd never take ownership of it. So I think this is like really amazing.
You know what? I'll be honest with you, because that's such a good point, and that's something that I struggled with so much, of never wanting to be perceived as difficult or never being too loud or never, like, I just want to be easy. I'm here. I'm grateful to be here, like, and not asking for too much. And I think I went through some things in my life that like made me realize that people are going to like you. People are going to have their opinion on you, kind of no matter how malleable you are, how much you even compromise your voice and your worth. And so you might as well start asking for stuff. And that realization happened right before I made this ask. And so I think it was the first, and I was like, I was met with a yes. And so to start to try to, but everything you're saying, I think as women, we're so conditioned to just be like, we need 30 hours of, 30 years of experience to do one thing. And we watch someone else come in and just go, I'll figure it out on the fly, as opposed to believing we're capable and asking.
Yeah, because the stakes are so high too. Like if we fail, well, you were going to fail anyways, because, you're just a woman. But this is so inspiring. Like all of it, I feel like that kind of thing is the superhero again, to do the thing that you're scared to do is always the superhero's kind of triumph, right? And so for us to do I say us, I didn't do anything.
We're a team.
We're
a team. That's what it is.
Yes,
It's teamwork.
already I'm inspired.
Yeah.
But it is, and it makes other people feel like they can do it. Like feel like you can, I'm inspired.
That's such a good point, because I think part of the problem for women not believing that we can do this is we have not seen ourselves in these positions.
Yes.
We have not seen other women doing this. So we just assume like, oh, that's not for me.
Yeah.
But, boys, they grow up and they have all the superheroes that look like them. They have, their favorite male actors and their favorite male directors, and they get all this recognition and fanfare. And so they're like, of course I can do that thing. Of course I can learn on the fly. And for women, we're like, I can name, however many female directors, so you just assume that's not a space for me to fill.
Yeah.
And the nuance voice, the specificity of your voice and your lived experience is important, and that there's value in it being told. It's something like, especially I think with our Supergirl fans, where like as we're going through our finale, it sounds cheesy, but it's like believing that like your voice is important, you're your own superhero, no one's going to save you but yourself, and like there's value in all of that. And I think so many times we're like, oh, they're cooler, or their story matters, or like no one's going to care about me. There's a place in it, and I promise you, like when you activate that, somebody else will feel seen and feel empowered to do the same. And that's so important.
Someone needs to hear your
really,
Yeah,
I
100%.
feel really great about this conversation, guys. I feel genuinely empowered, and that is what I was. I mean, I knew it was going to happen, but it is what I was hoping for as well. As we get close to winding down our time here, I got to go back to Nicole Kang because you knew I had to. Because as much as we talk about heroes, female villains can also be the most fun to watch on screen, and seeing that character development and the arc. Miss Thing over here, we're not going to let the hair go. Miss Poison Ivy, Nicole Kang, you are Poison Ivy, at least for a little while.
I have just seen Uma Thurman, like.
So tell me about playing this, because obviously we know we saw the progression here is like, we know Mary is not a villain. We know that this is just a happenstance. She got infected, but like Poison Ivy is also one of the best big bads, even though I wouldn't necessarily call her bad. I want to know everything about playing Poison Ivy.
Okay, talk about pressure. Yeah. That it's like an insane sentence. I'm like, yeah.
Nicole's still processing it. That's why I would be too.
I was gonna say, while you're processing, I'm so excited that this is a thing now, because Nicole and I have been texting red hair photos for months and like figuring out her hair color. So I'm very
my guru. Like, and it's so insane because I've got ladies like Ozzy, like Nicole, who've gone through this process and creating things and paving the way. I mean, I would have never even thought. Ozzy was like, you need to start thinking about this. Like, what kind of red? And I was like, what kind of red?
Lovely shade, darling.
Let's pull up info photos. And she's just trying to like,
and Ozzy's like, I'm just gonna text you, and like a Pinterest board comes through, and I am so grateful for that community. I also think another thing that is really great about our community here, and even panels like this, that there's such a solidarity in, well, they're not going to tell you how, but this is how, and that there truly is room. So this has been like an all-encompassing process as well. And I will be honest and say that the storyline for Mary is not Pamela Isley, who traditionally in the comics becomes the OG Poison Ivy, which we are also lucky to have as a part of our story too. Bridget Regan is incredible. But yeah, exactly. I had to add that. So it was not a thing that was assumed, but I think a lot of us went through this thing where a huge part of my work and my activism outside of the show that I found is a huge stress in intersectionality, the difficulties that come along with that. And the truth of it is heartbreaking 95% of the time. And the work that has to be done is, a truckload. And again, feeling not heard, not seen, not recognized, and hate speech is alive and well. And with platforms like ours, we really come face to face with it. And what can we say? What can we do? And how can we, channel all of this into creating something better to say than responding? And that's like an almost impossible task. So this idea came from, a lot of times I hit a wall and I got turned away over and over again about being like, hi, I think I'm having this experience. So probably Mary is having this experience. She lives in a city in Gotham. So for example, what is it like for her to be an Asian woman in Gotham? Does it matter? I have used something that I've stolen from Sandra Oh, and she says, I infuse my ethnicity and my identity into every character because that's who I am. And for me, my face is my face. So this idea that, we don't address our lived in experiences into our characters is a myth. Like inevitably these two people come crashing together, and there is something real, which is what I think fans are so keyed into. And so Mary's arc of feeling the ways that she does is real. But then what does it mean that I'm Korean playing this villain or anti-hero? I will say all good villains are anti-heroes, I think. Okay, well, I know in cinema, I personally wanted to shy away from her foreignness being what makes her scary, or her mystique, or well, Poison Ivy is a sexy character. Well, what do we do to Asian women in cinema in terms of their sexuality? And how can I be cognizant and aware that for sure, like, I felt the pressure of that. I think in terms of being the first, along with these two, it comes with a lot of pressure in those kind of minute ways that of course I have to worry about the hair, and of course I have to learn, because there's nobody else who's going to care more than you are when you're drawing the suit, when you're picking the colors, and when you're putting it on and stepping up and saying the things that you mean to say. That has been a truly all-encompassing experience, and I am like nervous sweating day in and day out for sort of the world to see it, but it does really feel like scary, like you're standing in the street in front of everyone sort of naked, and so I think that sort of means that it's what I'm supposed to be doing, and pretty cool.
Nicole, who cares what the world thinks? You got the four of us here, and we are all very.
I'm like so into this for you. Nicole, I want it because I think you're amazing as a friend, but also, I know your arc because I'm friends with you and really good friends with Bridget. So I know how amazing it's going to be. And even in that arc, Sarah Schechter, who produces a bunch of our shows and is wonderful. My first Comic-Con, she said something on our panel that stuck with me for many years, which was, like I came in and Makad played Jimmy Olsen, who's my brother in the show. A lot of our characters in this world are white in the comics and have been cast with diversity. And she was like, there's a whole generation of kids who know Jimmy Olsen as a Black man, and they actually don't know the Oza version. And there's going to be, I could cry, but there's going to be a group of young Asian girls who think you're Poison Ivy.
Oh, you know what really hit me that you said at the beginning of this, when you were auditioning for it, you said that it was open to all ethnicities. And I was like, why does it need to say that? Why does that need to be a thing at all? Like, I've never experienced that open to all ethnicities, because it's always been assumed that, and it should be assumed that if you're going to play a superhero, it's open to fucking all ethnicities. Yeah. But I think what you've done now is that's never going to be on a breakdown again. It should be a given.
Guys, I'm like really, really upset, but I do have to wrap us up now. But I'm so.
Do you have to wrap us up?
Oh, that's a good one.
Never a missed pun. Never a missed pun.
Dreamer.
All right, I'm not gonna be able to do any better than that one. But truly, Nicole, Emily, and Ozzy, thank you so very much for being part of this conversation today. You all know that I could talk to you for another hour if I could, but unfortunately I cannot. Those of you who are watching this panel, please go find these women on social media and just be part of their tribe online, because as we have made clear during this panel, support is everything. Even if it's virtual, everyone is connected. That is the beauty and also terror of social media. But again, thank you ladies so very much. To those watching, please check out more of our wonderful content at the Power Women Summit. And we will see you again very, very soon.
Bye.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Power Women Summit's View from the Top, Women's Leadership in the Content Boom. I'm Sharon Waxman. I'm the founder and the editor-in-chief of The Wrap and Wrap Women. And today I am really excited to speak with an amazing group of executives who are basically responsible for overseeing and developing and distributing your favorite content. But it's not as easy as it looks. So we're going to get into it, sort of what are the challenges of these big responsibilities. And let me just start by introducing our wonderful panelists. First to join us is a 4 times Emmy Award recipient, Amy Trocazo Davis. She is the Executive Vice President of Development and Production for Factual Programming at Discovery. She oversees all aspects of their nonfiction content for Discovery Channel and the Animal Planet networks. Welcome, Amy.
Hi.
Hi. Emma Miller, she is the Senior Vice President and co-head of AMC's Scripted Development and Programming. For the past 7 years, Emma has focused equally on developing new series and overseeing current ones, including The Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead, and Dietland. So welcome, Emma.
Yeah.
And finally, Liesl Copeland is the Executive Vice President of Content and Platform Strategy at Participant. In this role, Liesl works in tandem with the company's content teams through development and production, advising on optimal strategy for all their properties, which I would just say that sounds kind of vague, but in this day and age, it's probably really, really core to figuring out what content goes where and how. And let's talk about that. So welcome to all you boss ladies. Thanks for coming. Let me just start by asking a really simple question. How are things right now? We're fully a year and a half and more into COVID, where everybody's been working remotely. And you guys are running teams of people who are reporting to you and managing a whole lot of different projects at a time when people are consuming more content than ever on streaming platforms and television and everywhere. So Amy, let me start with you. How has your work life changed, and are you doing your business differently?
Well, we definitely are doing our business differently from home and in Zoom. And, there are definite pros and cons. We have way more meetings, which is a pro and a con. I feel like we were super energetic and kind of, just feeling like we had to do as much as we possibly could. I came to the company just almost 2 years ago. So I was here for 2 months and then we went into COVID. So that was interesting in itself. And became the head of discovery development somewhere along the line there. So I just actually met a few of my people that are on my staff a couple of months ago in person for the first time.
Wow.
So but
that sounds incredibly challenging to have to build a relationship with your team.
It isn't, because, we saw people in their homes, which we didn't used to see. We saw their kids, we saw their animals, we would actually do a thing with our teams where we'd have one person a week show us like the inside of their house and do a tour. And so in a weird way, we got to know people a little bit better, or in a way that we wouldn't have before, but you do miss that personal interaction and that idea that comes in when you run into somebody in the hallway. You know, there is that too. So, so it's been challenging, but also rewarding on some level.
Where did you come from 2 years ago? Where were you?
I was at E and at Game Show Network before that, and then the early days of Bravo.
Got it. Yeah. Well, it's been reality television has developed quite a lot since then. Emma, talk about a little bit. How has it been for you?
It's been really challenging, but really exciting. As Amy said, I think if anything, I've been extremely impressed with how adaptable everyone's been. And I think, again, as Amy said, I think it's really allowed me to see my team and allowed our colleagues to see each other as people first. And that I think has benefited the work. For us, it's to be honest, it's the most robust slate we've had in the history of the company. So, and I think a lot of that has been because of the efficiencies that have come from working differently and having to really think about how we work. But so I would say overall, it's exciting. We've been slowly coming back to the office. So it's been really wonderful to be able to see everyone in person. But the benefits of learning how to work differently, I think, haven't ended. And so I'd like to see it as a positive overall.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the challenges that have been involved?
Well, I think similarly, I came into this specific role after we had after we'd already started working from home. So having a new role and doing it digitally was difficult. We have our new president, Dan McDermott, also started after the pandemic, so I didn't get to meet him in person for quite a while. And so I think it's those basic, the things that you take for granted, the relationships that you build in the hallway or over coffee that later pay off when you're having difficult conversations. Those are the things that I think, I really, really became aware of. And then I think just being mindful about how sometimes productivity might seem like a good thing until it's not. So fitting in 3 more meetings a day because Zoom allows it may not actually mean the quality of the work is better. So I think in that way, it's been a little challenging, but we've learned a lot and we've grown.
Mm-hmm. So Liesl, you went from a really high-powered agent job at Endeavor Content to participant, which in the middle of COVID, which can't be a coincidence. And would love to hear your thinking about sort of how you decided to make that shift and what that has meant in your work-life balance and the way you approach this new role.
Sure. It was a confluence of so many things. I think, being part of what people are terming the Great Resignation, a lot of the change came from being at home and being able to evaluate the sort of work-life balance, the priorities, the being with my family more, and realizing, how that was impacting my abilities to be thoughtful about my work. And, having spent a lot of my time at Endeavor Content while really always trying to focus on, sort of purpose-driven content opportunities and clients who were focusing on that space, I had a lot of opportunity to work with Participant as my client in a number of instances. And, the opportunity presented itself at a great time for me to sort of get back to being in, really a smaller company and being more entrepreneurial while having been at Endeavor Content for such a long time, which gave me so much opportunity and so much experience. Really a lot of the work of the entrepreneurial time when I was there was sort of coming to bear into a new era. And I was really interested in kind of being in a smaller environment again and getting to focus on the social impact content side of my personal desires was just a golden opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I find also, just as somebody who's running my company, that I had to make so many adjustments that, I'm a very I'm a journalist and driven and all of those things. And a lot of that stuff I had to sort of learn to was forced to dial that back, because so many people are going through their own process. And I found you just couldn't presume. You have no idea what's going on in people's day. How do you deal with that? Anybody to jump in just from a management point of view as a leader?
I'll jump in and say, I think the whole industry is causing us all to adapt on a really fast basis. And my purview and thinking about the marketplace really primarily and how that informs our decisions from green light to financing, co-financing, all the way through when to take something to market and more. It's like you have to be up to speed and you have to be able to make real-time decisions. And I think it's more than ever. And I think being thoughtful about that, reacting to your teammates, to your colleagues, and prioritizing that is really where things hold together, right? As any team being able to sort of tackle any given task, which is changing all the time. So you kind of have to put your mask on first, right? Not in the COVID sense, but like if when you're traveling, they
right in the airplane sense,
right?
I love that
lesson of all.
Yeah.
And so you have to sort of, and I have been really inspired listening to a lot of leaders, and I think even most of all female leaders really naturally being good at thinking about how to balance so many different inputs and their teammates' needs and their direct reports' needs on a human level, and really react to that thoughtfully and pace that, realizing that in the speed, we can't be at that speed and be successful. We have to slow down and we have to say, let's establish these, foundational things about our team, our company at large, in order to respond in the marketplace that's changing so much. And I am very inspired by so much of what I've read and heard directly from people about how they've done that. And so many people do that uniquely with their own skill set. And it's watching your colleagues do it with their teams and learning lessons from one another and really banding together and feeling like this is our shared goal and our shared purpose. What I've experienced is it's been very buoying to me as a leader and very buoying to me as just a person providing to my teammates, so you have that kind of virtuous circle going back and forth. I don't know about Amy and Emma.
Well, I would just say, it changed the way I work completely. Before Zoom, I was that boss that needed to have all people in the office at all times, just so we could all be together. And Zoom totally changed that. And I trust my people. And it wasn't that I didn't trust them before, but I just felt like I needed to have them close. And so you do have them close in Zoom. And so it works to, your advantage in some ways. Not having the personal interaction, you do miss that. But I literally changed the way I work because of these events.
So let's go to how the industry has changed so radically in this same period of time, which is that everything has moved to streaming. The focus has moved to streaming in such a big way. The demand for content was already extremely strong, but it's now moved into this hyper demand where there's just, talk to any producer and they're busier than they've ever been in their lives. And I'm sure that's true for you guys who are developing material and looking for intellectual property and looking for a director. And every female director and director of color is busy and hired already, So let's talk about sort of this change that's gone on in the industry. Is that been an exciting development, or is it just while you're dialing it back at home, you're also, the demands on you from a work perspective are greater than ever? Emma, how about you?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think it's really exciting. I think the change in the industry and the increase in demand has really served us as a company. I would say, like, the shift in the way people are looking for content, the shift away from relevance, or the shift away from convenience and more towards the quality of the content, because now the accessibility and the convenience is no longer really a novelty, has really served us.
Right.
And so I would say it's a great moment for us. We've always been kind of a fan-focused company that really focuses on craftsmanship and quality, and that being the thing that everyone's seeking out now feels like it's making it a really good time for us to be ramping up our development in the way that we are. So,
but does it make it more challenging if you're differentiating quality is quality?
Yeah.
Isn't it harder when there's so much pressure to be producing?
Well, I'd say I think AMC has always really our strong suit has been our ability to identify quality, no matter if it's a new voice or something that's been overlooked by another network. And it really comes down to, and I always talk to my team, it comes down to our own ability to identify what's good. And so, to be honest, there's unlimited creators out there, and it might mean someone's a little newer and needs support. But if we're willing to put in the work and do the work and trust our own taste, I think you're never going to run out of great directors. You're never going to run out of particularly great writers. And so I think it's a real opportunity, especially as we're pushing ourselves to find new voices, new authentic voices, new storytellers that haven't been in the industry before. I think it's actually a really positive shift, and it's something that fits our model really well.
Amy, how about you?
I think it's a super exciting time. It reminds me of the early days. I was in cable in the 90s when that was exploding. And it kind of reminds me of that time where it just feels like the possibilities are endless, particularly for content providers. We at Discovery, we have this other platform now that we can put different kinds of Discovery shows on. We just launched a show called Naked and Afraid of Love, which is the Naked and Afraid dating show.
Really? Like a romantic version of Naked
Yes, and
Afraid
that's not something we probably would have ever launched on the linear channel, but we had Discovery Plus, and so it's just opened the door to so many different kinds of things. And so I just feel like it's so exciting. The pressure is always the pressure. It's been that way for forever, and I think we're in jobs that are pressure filled. So, it's just sort of putting one kind of pressure against another, really. But I do think it's an incredibly exciting time.
We'll talk about, I want to ask Lisa the same in a second, but since you started talking about this show, what are some of the other shows that you're working on that you're excited about that are coming up?
Well, we do have another dating show that we're going to be putting on Discovery Plus. It was announced as mating season, but we're going to change the title. We're looking at subcultures. So there's a show called Pig Royalty that we're picking up a second season of, which is sort of the toddlers and tiaras in the 4-H world, which is a sort of niche place, but super fun and really
like farm animals in fashion shows. What are you talking about?
It's actually kids who show pigs, pigs, and then they're sort of dressed, and it's kind of got a toddlers and tiaras twist to it, and they actually they can put themselves through school and the money that they win. So there's real stakes there and amazing characters. We're working on a show with this wild beekeeper that I'm really excited about. So it's looking at those kinds of niches that people don't really think about, but then when you see it, you're like, oh yeah, that exists. And so just different.
Does that mean you have to sort of expand your own thinking of what audiences will
yeah. I mean, yes, and I think it's also, we just have different platforms now, and Gold Rush still is getting a big audience on Discovery, and our car shows are still getting a big audience on Discovery. And so it's just figuring out where we're going to bring in new people, where we're going to satisfy the people that we already have, and just keeping all those people happy and wanting to see our content.
And when does the beekeeper show come on? I want to watch that one. I had a bee in the station. The beekeepers. These are amazing.
Bees are amazing, and they're like babies. You can watch them forever.
Yeah, I won't even go down that rabbit hole. Or beehive,
but I believe that one's going to come on in first quarter. So
I will tune into that one. Lisa, how about you? What is it sort of, when we talk about peak content, you're like, we're past peak content, we're to like super peak content. Like, what does that mean for you and your day-to-day?
Yeah, it's the whole reason for the content strategy piece to exist at Participant, because I think distribution it comes in all different shapes and sizes. And I'm a big believer in this sort of net positive from all of this change, where every content maker, supplier is also getting all this direct feedback from their audience. And it allows Amy to super serve an audience that they really understand at Discovery. It allows Emma to super serve an audience that they really understand at AMC. Everybody launching streamers for AMC Plus and for Discovery Plus. You know, we're in close contact with, you know, those streamers and everyone all the time about their needs, and they really understand more and more what their audiences are looking for. And for us, that's a boon because we're really focused on looking around the corners, you know, and betting on artists who can really see around the corners ahead of time for what is going to become relevant in the near future. And when we understand and can converse with, you know, the buyers here on this call and those in the business at large, you know, it really allows us to take those bets early on and really support artists at the center of art and activism and bring content with all that information into the marketplace. We too are really working a lot on sort of super serving an audience who we call participants, and, you know, really understanding through our social channels and our own channels, you know, where they will move from, as we say, from the seats to the streets, to really take allow us to put more of a fourth act after the three acts of the content itself. The fourth act for us is the impact act, where we're really working with our marketing, impact, and audience teams to sort of spur social change and engage audiences to sort of help move through that social change needed. And so, you know, to be able to do that empowered with all this information is incredible for us, and it allows us to scale, hopefully over time, you know, more projects into the marketplace with different partners, and be succeeding with all of them.
Mm-hmm. So give us an example of some of the things that you're working on, or that's going to be coming out that illustrates what you're talking about.
Sure. So, you know, taking the Women's Power Summit theme, I guess, you know, two projects that were recently announced that I'd love to speak about are, we have a Shirley Chisholm project with Regina King and John Ridley.
Yeah, I saw that. Amazing.
Yeah. That is, you know, it's really exciting. It's extremely singular, right? You have that moment of intersectionality of Black congresswomen running for president at that time, and really being able to explore that at this time, post the racial reckoning and everything that we've been experiencing in the culture at large, through the, you know, the lens of those amazing artists and what they bring to that story.
Regina was our keynote speaker last year, just pointing that out.
Amazing.
So, thank you.
Yeah, she can run the world and will someday.
Yeah,
and totally. You know, it's really unbelievable to imagine that reaching audiences, right, where she's playing that role and exploring, you know, a Black woman at that time, you know, achieving all that she did, and what that means for what should be happening now. And you know, we just announced an incredible series, multi-part series with Chloe Zhao coming on board to EP on Vincent Chin with The Estate, and Helen Zia and everybody involved in that. So we're really thrilled to have that from our TV team, and bringing that out next year, talking to buyers now about that.
That's the story of
Vincent Chin, who was, you know, it was a big story many years ago, where Vincent Chin was an Asian American who went into a bar and, you know, was unfortunately murdered. And it's exploring that story with his estate. There have been a number of Vincent Chin projects that have been attempted recently in the industry and so forth. It's a big hot story, and it's really exciting to be working with the estate, Vincent's estate, and the reporters that were reporting on the scene of that activism that arose after his murder, and sort of telling that story, you know, like we did in Judas and the Black Messiah, really looking to tell the truths about history and really explore them deeply, and doing so in an episodic project with Chloe Zhao as one of our exec producers is a really exciting opportunity.
So then to go back to what I started with talking about, what your role is, how do you decide if that ought to be a series or a film or a short or animated or what?
Yeah, it's really, you know, a process of exploration with the creative teams themselves, right? We're very stitched together across feature narratives, scripted series, non-scripted series, and documentary films, and really feeling like for us where we can, you know, batten down a process with the right creative leads and lead. We'll very often explore doing a documentary and a scripted project on the same subject in some sequencing. And in this one, we felt it was, you know, an opportunity to tell that story more deeply than in 90 minutes, and to really allow it to live and breathe over a longer period of screen time. And it's very organic how it happens. But the, you know, Mira Kite, who runs television for us, Anika McLaren, Robert Kessel, who run film. And, unfortunately with Diane's passing in the documentary space, we have a great documentary team. Yeah, Diane Wireman, who really focus on docs and doc series. And, really through just the power of collaboration, one of the things being a participant for me that's so exciting is that at the highest level, it's extremely collaborative, and the senior leadership is incredibly supportive of the amazing seasoned executives overseeing each of those content categories, and who they just do really incredible development work. Their full teams are amazing. And so it's, the richness of the team that we have, delivers that quality time and time again. And so it's sort of a joy to behold. And my role again in that process is to really just support with strategic advice from the point of view of the marketplace on how packaged we need to be to take something out. When should we take something out? Obviously with television, you pitch early, but with film, you can have the opportunity to finance and co-finance and bring it to a later stage of its life prior to bringing it to market if you so choose. And so informing that process is a real pleasure.
Mm-hmm. And you're not the one taking it out, or sometimes you are?
Yes, I'm part of the team that takes it out. It's normally me and the creative team leads, in some formation with our partners, right? With their representatives and so forth. So it's always a village.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about some of the projects you're working on. What are you excited about going on at EMC?
Sure. As I said earlier, I mean, it's our busiest time ever in the company's history. And with that, I think we've picked up a bunch of new series for 2022. I mean, among them, we're doing Moonhaven from Peter Rocco, who ran Lodge 49 for us, so a long relationship with him. Dark Winds, which is a series we're incredibly excited about, based on the Tony Hillerman novels, with a predominantly Native American creative team behind it.
Wow. And
then we're doing Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire. Roland Jones has come on to adapt that. It's extremely exciting. We'll be shooting.
It's like oh wow, this is a television series?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's he's taken the source material and really made it his own. We're really, really thrilled about it, and we'll be shooting that in New Orleans this fall.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been incredibly exciting. And we just had the table read, it was great. And we're also going to be doing another series in the Walking Dead universe. We're doing an anthology series called Tales of the Walking Dead, which is going to be a really fun way to explore that world in a way we haven't seen before for us. Also, I mean, we're working on the final seasons of Better Call Saul, The Walking Dead.
Oh.
Killing Eve. I know it's bittersweet, but it's going to make for a really good next year. And then on top of all that, we're working on additional seasons of a bunch of other shows, including Kevin Can Fuck Himself and others. But we also have 6 writers' rooms going this fall, so it's more than we've ever done before. And I think the depth of what we're working on really it spans the gamut, and I think it speaks to kind of the legacy of us having really incredible character-driven dramas, but also these really.
I'm going to jump in and interrupt you. Who decided that it was okay to name the show Kevin Go Fuck Himself?
It was a spec script, so it came in with that title.
Oh, I'm sure it came in with that title. I get that, but still, somebody had to say okay.
Yeah, I think it was a lot of people that said okay, but it was hard to not say okay. It just, when you live with the title for that long and it's that powerful, it was hard to beat.
You mean there weren't a lot of people saying no, we can't do this? It was more people saying, why shouldn't we?
Yeah.
Oh, it's interesting.
Yeah. But
okay, sorry I interrupted you. Continue.
No, it's okay. No, that was it. I was just saying, it's just a really exciting time for us to have this much content and this much new content. I think coming on the heels of some of our legacy shows wrapping up feels really good for where we're at. Yeah, well,
as you say, the pressure is always on, but never more when you've got a big series that's coming to an end. So
yeah,
that's exciting and probably terrifying in some ways. I don't know.
Yeah.
One of the things that we do a lot at the summit is, we do a lot of mentorship. We have, maybe you guys are even mentoring and I don't even know, but we do actual sort of hands-on discussions with young people. And one of the purposes of these conversations is to sort of, help explain how it is you guys got to where you got to, and how anyone can sort of get into this business, because it seems so hard from the outside, and especially hard when there's not even an office building where you can go drop off your resume and hang out in the lobby and hope that, you know, whoever it may be, Jeffrey Katzenberg wants to hire, whatever, or one of you guys. So what advice would you give to either a younger version of yourself or to somebody who was, you know, young and ambitious, and certainly part of a group that the industry says they want to include more of: women, underrepresented groups, you know, people of color, people with disabilities, Native Americans, et cetera, et cetera. So what would you say?
I would say, you know, at the beginning of your career, seek out mentors and keep your foot on the gas, right? Like it's really important as you get to the level of, you know, Emma, Amy, and myself. For us, it's like mentor others, right? And create a network where you're helping younger women of all backgrounds, and anyone really that you find it has promise, and to really do that work and deliver on that promise of that relationship. For the getting in the front door of it is to get your network going and then ask for that mentorship. You know, it's very impressive when a young person meets someone like any of the three of us, or you, Sharon, or anyone who might be listening, and says, will you mentor me? And I would really be hard pressed to find many women in the industry who would say no to that question.
No.
Right?
Hang on, I'm actually telling you that I've had people tell me that they have had a really hard time finding mentors. It's a thing that our viewers, like the participants in this conference, tell us they like the most. And you probably wouldn't, and Amy wouldn't, and Emma wouldn't, I wouldn't, but I do hear that people say it's really hard to find mentors. Yeah,
you have to, I mean, it's hard work. It's hard work to put yourself in the rooms and to go and educate yourself and to commune with others. And right now, communing with others is really, really challenging. But there's someone at your college, there's someone who's a counselor in your high school. If you didn't go to college, there's some organization that you can join where then someone in that group, you can ask for mentorship and say, will you help me? I need to open doors in this place. It's really about relationship and, you know, kind of taking those relationships, making sure you're doing your part in those relationships, showing up, and then asking for that assistance, and then, you know, taking any guidance, but taking those steps and showing up where you need to for those steps as well. You know, it's, you know, I think that women right now, most of all, want to help so desperately other women that, you know, I think that there's such a reckoning across the industry, you know, right now, you know, in so many levels with, you know, a lot of groups that need more visibility that you mentioned, Sharon. And I think, you know, there are very deservingly many groups on that list. And I think that women really, you know, still need that support from other women in addition to all of that. And the intersectionality of women in any other group, whether they be differently abled or a woman of color, then even more so. And, you know, it's just something that I take very seriously, and, you know, have a number of women that I have stayed with and mentored for just different reasons, because they asked and they delivered on work. And now I'm writing a lot of, you know, college application essays or graduate program application essays and helping them with that, because so many people have made changes to their career paths that they are undertaking and continue to seek that guidance. But I think it's staying in those relationships. So ask for those. And it sounds hard, but there's someone that you have access to that can help you get to another relationship. And that's where you need to begin. Yeah, because sometimes it's like, that may not be the relationship, but they may go out to their network and say, yes, who would be the right fit for this person? You're a couple degrees away from a contact that can help you, and you may not know who they are. And so who do you know that can help you find them? Well, before I move on, is there any can you talk about mentor in your life? Is there anybody who sort of really mentored you that was important to help you find your path? You know, I've been fortunate to have so many people that were kind of the right voice at the right time. When I first got into publishing, there was a woman at Good Housekeeping and another woman at Hearst Magazines who really just did that. You came out of print magazines? I did many years ago, okay. 8 Ice Ages ago, before I got into the content business. Okay. And, you know, for me, the one thing about agency that is true is that you're kind of all sole proprietors of a business looking to benefit from the network of your colleagues, and women like Nancy Josephson, people like Rick Rosen, obviously Ariane Patrick, Graham and Chris, so many people at WME, you know, kind of gave me that sort of guidance along the way. Nancy Josephson is a one woman roadshow of mentorship, and is an amazing
She's
executive.
a partner at WME, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Mhm.
And so, you know, but I think you also find them in unexpected places where people really give you solid advice and can really be sought out for that. You know, Diane Wireman was always a person that I listened to very astutely and observed and mentored myself through watching her. And so, you know, I you know, shout out to them, but, you know, I'd love to also allow Emma and Amy to speak.
Yeah.
I'm sure they have important news for your listeners.
I can jump in just
Yeah,
because I was going to say Rick Rosen was also an early mentor of mine. So when you said his name, it put a smile on my face, because there's been many incredible women in my life who have been mentors, but I think some of the men too, Rick being kind of number one, meant a lot. And I think particularly at the beginning of your career, I wish it wasn't this way, but for me, and I think a lot of women, there was an element of needing someone to tell me I was worth something before I believed it in myself. And so I really respect the people early on that gave me the permission to kind of see a future for myself. But I think in addition to the mentorship, I would say maybe two things. I don't see a lot of young women in particular. I don't see the problem being the amount of work they're putting in. I think they're all working really, really hard. I think, frankly, it's more about, it's twofold. It's about making your impact known, making the work that you do be known, not letting others take responsibility for that work and not doing it and hoping that someone will notice. You know, I think that's huge. And then also just, I think really making sure that you have a point of view and equally learning how to properly express it. And I think being comfortable with the idea that maybe in order for that to happen, you just need to put a little bit of effort and preparation in, right? I see a lot of women who are kind of comparing themselves to colleagues who perhaps think on their feet in a different way, or just are more kind of bold and confident in the first thought that pops into their head, being those who, you know, they wish they could emulate. And I think, like, as I've gotten older, I've become more comfortable understanding like what my skill set is, and being comfortable with knowing that for me, preparation and taking time and being thoughtful and asking questions, and then coming with the confidence that comes with that to the drawing board is the way that I do my best work. And I think early in my career, I was really insecure about that. So I guess it's just about being comfortable knowing what your process is and kind of owning that and owning your own point of view. But
and well, you bring up an interesting point there, which is both, you know, having the confidence to express an opinion when you're, let's say, a junior person, right? You're like the young person at the table, or in the room. Maybe you're not even at the table. Maybe you're at the back of the, or in a Zoom. I don't know. Never mind. But what is that balance between, okay, you should raise your voice, but you mentioned how you raise your voice. Is it appropriate, or in what way? You know, that could be a career breaker, maker or a breaker.
Yeah,
right?
I think there's a lot of discussion around, you know, make your voice be heard. And there's a lot of kind of like stories, I think, like legends told about the time that someone raised their hand and said the thing. But I think what gets lost is, what are you saying? And is it thoughtful? And is it, you know, and I think there's power in thinking about it in that way, because that puts a lot of control in the person who's speaking's hands. Like, you can affect a lot of change in a meeting through what you say if you spend a lot of time thinking about the right thing to say. It's not just about saying it, you know. And I think there's something to that. And it's just all about preparation too. It's not just boldness. It's about then what's coming out of your mouth when you say it.
Mm-hmm. That's so interesting. I think that is a tough balance a lot of time.
Yeah. And it's reading the room. I mean, look, I will say, on the other flip side, like being a senior leader, I try to create an environment where people can say things they're not comfortable with and kind of work through it. But again, it's about reading the room. Is it a room where you can kind of say whatever's on your mind and work through the process with people around you? Or do you really want to come to the table with something thoughtful because you're in a room full of people that you don't know, where you're creating an impression? It's all of those things. But
Yeah, and I'd say it's also seeking out those jobs or seeking out those people to work with that you really want to work with and that you feel comfortable. I always say to people, the job interview is not just for them to interview you, it's for you to interview them and to see if if you feel like you're compatible. If not, you're smart, you're going to get another job. It really is working with people that you really want to work with and on product that you really want to work on. And and maybe it's just because that's worked out for me, but I believe that that's true, that you really can make your own destiny that way if you look at it that way, particularly when you're interviewing, because it also can give you a sense of confidence too, if you're asking about them and if you're wondering about how they think and what makes them tick. I think, you'll just find yourself in a happier place if it's somebody that you really, connect with.
Well, can you think of an example from your early career, Amy, where you did that? Not
Yes,
trying to put you on the spot, but there you go.
Yes, I started very early as I actually worked in the theater. I was a casting director for the theater, a casting intern, and became the casting director. And so at that place, they always asked our opinions, even when we were interns. And I think because they really needed it, because there wasn't anybody else around,
Right.
But I would say when I met Frances Barrick at Bravo, I met her on a general audition, just a general meeting. And
what was her job at the time?
She was I think she was the SVP of programming, maybe the SVP of programming.
Okay, she was.
And there was no job at the time. And I met her, and I remember calling the person who had introduced us saying, I don't know if I'll ever get a job there, but I want to know this woman for the rest of my life. And
wow.
And it just was, and then about, a month later, a job came up. And it was a job that was for less money than the other job that I was up for and offered. And I went with that job because I knew that we connected. I knew that the product.
You went with the lower paying job.
I went with the lower paying job because I just had a feeling that that was the right thing. And it really was the right thing. Because
that person, understood you and could.
I think we really understood one another. We had the same sense of humor. We liked the same things. We, saw Bravo in the same way. And were, this is very early days, only inside the Actors Studio was the original programming. And we, we did Queer Eye and Real Housewives and all those shows after that. But, we just saw things in the same way. And I think that it's really important that when you're on those interviews that you see what you can get out of the interview for you. And if it's the right person, then go with it. And if it's not, move on to something else. So it'll be there.
So I'm going to summarize: mentorship, find a mentor, be prepared, speak up, but be prepared, and find somebody who gets you as well as you get them. Right? Those are all, I think, 3 really good pieces of advice. What, before we wrap, I just want to go around and ask, what's on your mind as you think about the future, where we're going in this industry, as we look to have more diversity, more inclusion, and then also layered on top of this, all the challenges just from how the business has changed and disruption and the demands of that. So how are you thinking about things, and is it in a positive way, like, yes, women now have their seat at the table, we're now good, or it's just going to continue to be an uphill struggle? And how are you thinking about it? Emma, she's
Sure.
thinking while she's thinking.
Yeah.
She's thinking while I see that.
No, I think, to be honest, it's what I said earlier. I think it's exciting. I think with more content than ever and more demand for content than ever happening at the same time, as a real commitment and willingness to program stories from different voices that haven't been showcased. It's a great confluence of things, right? And for us, again, as a place that I feel like really takes bold chances on what's on the page, it feels like the possibilities are endless, and we're not doing the same old thing, which is really like the reason I think most of us do what we do is because of the passion for the creative. So I'm incredibly enthusiastic. It's daunting, but it's really, really exciting.
I agree with that. Yeah, I really agree with that. I think the questions that I ask myself, and I think we all have to ask ourselves more and more as we think about the answer to your question, are, the decisions I'm making and the decisions that I'm in groups that are being asked to be made, who is at the table, and just constantly evaluating that, constantly trying to evaluate any biases that we all travel with and we're all trying to perfect and improve, and really sort of make sure that there are others at the table, that you're getting those inputs, that feedback, and widening the aperture on how discussion happens inside. Perhaps Zoom Life has a lot of benefits, and it's that one of them is that I think it's interesting that we're always all the same size. Every person has the same heft in a meeting, because that rectangle is only as big as it is, and it's the same size as the one next to it and above it and below. And it's just to sort of keep that equity going, at every opportunity, and to constantly be checking for that, because I think that it's overdue that there be more people of more backgrounds at the table, kind of making all kinds of decisions in every company, small and large. And so it's just constantly just taking it slower and asking, what does this demand of me right now, and who should I reach out to make sure that that's happening? Because I think then we can really nail the opportunity in front of us. Because I do think, I agree with Emma, that it is exciting. And I feel fortunate, a participant, that's something that we have to think about, even more so, because it's a big part of our brand, that we're, there in the crosshairs of art and activism, and sort of, telling things truthfully and things that are relevant. And so, it's a real opportunity industry wide.
Yeah, that's a new model. And then Amy, of course, you're at Discovery, and I know you're not allowed to talk about this, but you're supposed to be merging with Warner Media next year.
So I read, yes.
So, I think, your life might change quite a lot, or it might not. I don't know, because you've got so much on your plate.
Yeah, listen, I think the ability to adapt for any of us is what's gonna keep us here. Certainly the last 2 years have proven that, and just keep adapting, I think, is the way to success. But, in terms of that, we're thrilled that David Zaslav is going to be commandeering this new ship. And we know from, personal experience that he's great. And so that's exciting to us. But beyond that, we really don't know what the future will bring until the merger happens sometime next year. But it's exciting. They're two great companies. It's exciting.
Yeah, but beyond that, sort of the context of this desire for change in the industry, and the desire to see a more inclusive, entertainment and media industry across the board, in front of the camera, behind the camera, the executive suites.
Yeah, well, it's certainly long overdue. And I think it's, I have a daughter who's working as a literary assistant right now in the theater. And, the opportunities for her I think are going to be much bigger than they were necessarily for me at her age, I think, so I think that there's great opportunity for people. And I think, it's just about adapting and being able to sort of like move in the direction you need to move, and I think it's exciting. Like, who wants to do the same old thing that we've done before? So, I just think all of that's exciting. It's just, we're problem solvers. And so at the end of the day, it's just figuring out how to solve the problem, and find the right content and connect with the audience that you want to connect with. And so, I don't know, it just feels like there's just more opportunity now. So it's exciting.
Yeah. So, I do think I'm constantly thinking when I'm having these conversations, I could talk to you guys all day, and I'm constantly thinking about like the 22-year-old version of who, any one of the people in this conversation, and they're watching today, and thinking about like, okay, what can I take away? And I think that, there's a lot of optimism expressed here. I think there's a desire across the board for, like, you are now in a position to lift up other people from underrepresented communities and women, and even just what Participant is as a company is something that wouldn't even have been a thing a generation ago. So that, I think that is the direction that we're moving in. But these conversations are extremely important. And so I really appreciate you guys taking the time to share your experiences. You know, you have so much on your plates and so much responsibility. And I think it's enormously helpful and generous of you guys to share with us today. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having us, Sharon.
Thanks, Sharon.
Thanks, Amy, Emma, and Liesl. Thank you. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Journalists on the Frontline, presented by the International Women's Media Foundation. I'm Sharon Waxman, the CEO of The Wrap and founder of Wrap Women. Every year at the Power Women Summit, we are honored to spotlight the winners of the IWMF's Courage Awards. These are women who risk their lives to tell the truth and to report on the governments and communities that they live in around the world. Before we jump into a conversation about these women, let's take a look at what the IWMF is all about.
The stories of today may not be in your newsfeed. Why? Because the journalism industry still isn't equitable. So ask yourself, whose byline are you reading? The IWMF works tirelessly to ensure the news media reflects the diversity of our world. Join us.
This year's recipients of the IWMF Courage in Journalism Awards include the all-women Dalit reporting and editing staff of the Indian news outlet Khabar Lahariya, Paula Ugaz, a Peruvian print and broadcast journalist, the imprisoned Belarusian journalists Katarina Andreeva and Daria Chutsova, and the U.S. photojournalist and documentary photographer Vanessa Charlot, who I am delighted to say is able to join us today. As a freelance photojournalist, Vanessa's work covers the intersection of race, identity, politics, and economics. In addition to her extensive coverage of the Black Lives Matter movement in the aftermath of George Floyd's murder, she also covered the 57th anniversary of the March on Washington, former President Trump's rallies in St. Louis, Missouri, and Tulsa, Oklahoma. Charlot's other work includes the impact of COVID-19, gun control, and immigration. Her current projects are focused on the lived experience of migrant workers in South Florida, where she lives, queer families, and other voices absent from the mainstream news. Under an oppressive gaze, Vanessa Charlot holds power to account while enduring trauma inflicted upon her own community. Welcome.
Thank you.
So it's always a pretty emotional moment in the summit when we get to interview the journalists from the Courage Awards, because every single person we've had at the summit is just so amazing. And it's less usual that we're talking to an American journalist.
Right.
So you have talked about in some of your writing that goes with your work, and your work is amazing, and we're happy to be showing it at the summit, at our live event, and on the website for people to appreciate what you are putting into the world, is the idea that you live in a country that kills its journalists.
Right.
What do you mean by that when you say that?
So I think that what has happened last year specifically is that journalists were scrutinized, we were attacked in a way that was unprecedented in the United States. Okay. And specifically being from a community of color, a Black community, and what was happening last year with a lot of the racial tension and disparities, to be a photojournalist that are telling stories from the same community that was being targeted, my life personally was in danger. And so
Can you be more like,
sure.
tell us more specifically, like what happened to you?
Yeah, like I remember covering a protest in Florissant, which is a city north of St. Louis. Okay. It's right outside of Ferguson, Missouri, where Mike Brown was assassinated. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of racial tension there. And the Proud Boys would come out. And so specifically, I remember standing in front of the police department, and there was a huge truck that was driving towards the crowd. And the police didn't stop it, right? Or another situation that I remember quite acutely was in front of the St. Louis Art Museum. So not only were the Proud Boys there, but other white nationalist groups were there. Mm-hmm. And nothing was done to stop them. Nothing was done to separate the two groups. And I knew that because I had the camera in my hand and I was telling this kind of story, that I could easily be targeted.
Well, that's the thing, is like we've seen many pictures here. We're in Los Angeles, and there's been a lot of footage and images of the police attacking journalists, which I would never have thought would be possible in Los Angeles, a very liberal city. Ferguson, obviously, racial tensions were insanely high at that time, and I don't know if the police were, if you felt like the police were not there on your side as a person of color, A, right. And B, as a journalist who maybe is perceived as out to make the police look bad.
No, absolutely. My saving grace was whenever I threw on a veteran's hat. Oh. Or whenever I had some kind of...
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I would put it on, and it became a neutralizer of sorts. But if I didn't have that on, I was immediately identified as a Black woman with a camera. And so they were aggressive towards me in a way that if I have on my veteran's hat, that I would not experience the same thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you are actually, that's not like a borrowed hat, you're an actual military veteran.
Yes, I proudly served in the U.S. Army.
In the Army,
yes,
right?
For 3 years.
So tell us your background, like how did you even get into photography? You're from Miami,
Florida.
Right, okay.
So funny story, I was 12 years old, and my mom at the time was putting herself through nursing school.
Okay.
And she heard about this great school that was about an hour away from my house, and she was like, look, I really want to get you into this good school. Let's go to Walgreens and get you a camera. And it was like a $5 disposable camera.
For her to take a photo of you?
No, for me to go into my community and take pictures, because I needed to develop a portfolio to get into the school. Okay. So being from Miami, I knew the community very well. I went around to the various mom and pop shops, to where the cab drivers were, the parks, and I began to take pictures.
Do you mean on like on
a disposable? Yeah. And so my mom develops these pictures, and at the time I didn't know how to put a portfolio together. So I stick them into this little envelope, and I go down there, 12-year-old me with a little afro, and I'm super excited.
Wow.
And they have never seen immigrant communities documented that way. So I ended up getting into the school. But it wasn't until I came back home and I began to hand out the pictures and I saw my community's response that I was like, oh, wow, this is really, really important, because it was so affirming for them. And I remember...
What do you think was different about your gaze versus another person?
It wasn't voyeuristic. I'm a part of the community. I was able to see the beauty of it. I was able to see the complexities of it, right? So oftentimes, if you're from a community that is Black and immigrant, it is automatically identified or linked to as being disadvantaged or poor, right? So the culture, the traditions, the laughter, the family, things like that are not highlighted. And so because
instead it's like the poverty or the suffering.
Exactly. And completely missing the very humanity of the people, right? And so you're going in for a specific theme and negating who they are as these complex beings. So at 12 years old, I couldn't talk about it that way, but I understood that the response that I got from my community was that they were finally being seen, which was very powerful.
So then what happened when you'd obviously been in St. Louis, so before the Black Lives Matter movement had started, but
No, I was there before.
Before?
Yeah.
Even that?
Yes.
So let's fast forward a little bit to when George Floyd was killed.
Yes.
And you went to Minnesota, or
No, so
you were shooting in Missouri?
I was in Missouri. My partner was an executive director of a nonprofit in St. Louis.
Okay, you were
And
living there.
We're living there
Okay.
with our 6-year-old son.
Okay.
And I hear chanting outside of our doors. And I look downstairs, and there is at least 1,000 people in the streets of downtown St. Louis. So I grab my camera.
You're talking about, let's say, like June of last year or something like
May
that?
29th.
All right, pretty close.
Specifically 2020. And I grab my camera and I run downstairs, and my partner is petrified, right? Because she's just like, it's St. Louis, you're a Black woman, you can't be in the street, we have a kid. But I run down there anyway, because I knew that this story, if I don't partake in it, and not because it's solely my responsibility, but I understand that like history is often told from the position of the victor, not the victim, right? And so we completely ignore key stories that's on the ground. So I ran down and I began to take pictures and document what I was seeing. And specifically, I was really, really moved by the women that were big voices in the movement, that were leading the charge, and that were instrumental in pushing the needle forward. So a lot of the photographs actually focused on women that were in the struggle.
And then where did you just keep going out every day?
Every single day, because they were outside every single day. Yes.
Do you consider yourself an activist or a journalist or both?
I consider myself a journalist, but more importantly, I consider myself as someone who is bearing witness, right?
Well, that isn't
bearing
that
witness
fundamental thing
exactly
that journalists do.
And I think that my work has been used as a tool of activism to maybe incite change or incite conversation. But at the core, I'm someone who is a storyteller trying to tell a specific story that is free of what the late, great Toni Morrison calls the oppressive gaze.
I just want to mention to you that we've had as our speaker two of the last summits, Cory Bush, who's the member of Congress. We had her before she was elected, when she was just trying to get elected and telling stories about being a woman of color in Missouri, going around having people touch her skin, like crazy, really crazy things.
Yeah.
And then she came back last year after she was elected.
Yeah.
So
well,
you would like her. She's crazy passionate, as I'm sure you know, but she's fearless in the way that you are fearless as well, but in a different category. But we've heard stories about Ferguson. We've heard stories about the Black Lives Matter movement there. Why are you freelance? Is there a reason that you choose to not be associated with an institution or an organization?
That is such a great question. It is because I don't want my stories to be controlled. And I don't want it to be told from a perspective that I feel as though does not give the stories the fullness of their dignity. And there's not that there aren't publications that don't do stories justice, but I'm very, very sensitive about the work that I do. I love the work that I do, and I don't want it to be bridled in any way.
Yeah, I thought maybe you enjoyed freelance poverty, but that's another question. Having started out as a freelancer, I mean, it's hard. It's harder.
It's tough. It's
right?
tough. You have to be relentless. You have to be creative. Luckily, I have not experienced freelance poverty.
Good. Well, that's good to know. I mean, you put yourself in the right place at the right time. But what do? You then say you offer your work through an agency or something?
No, I typically have collectors. And so
really?
People purchase
art collectors.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And they purchase the photographs, especially the ones that will be that are considered historic, right? That 40 years from now, 50 years from now, when they look back on this, they have like 1 out of 10 pieces.
So you do like a limited edition
Yes.
of your prints?
I do.
That's really amazing. So you don't really want to be, sort of published in the paper the next day, is sort of not the way you approach it.
That's not my first priority. No, it happens sometimes, and it's fantastic.
Right.
But that's not the goal, at all.
The goal is more
freedom, and the freedom to be able to tell the stories the way
and more sort of a look, sort of longer term.
Exactly.
Rather than the next day.
Yes, and the other thing too is to bring Black bodies into photography in a way that's disruptive.
Typically,
photography
journalists are white.
Yeah, and it's white and male, right?
And why do you think that is?
I think because of access. I think also maybe certain communities don't know that this is a real viable option. I think that sometimes they have pressing things that they need to tend to. I understand that I'm in a very fortunate position as a Black woman to be able to do this full time and make a living from it and take care of my family from it.
But that also suggests to me that you didn't have a mentor. Like you didn't have someone who
I
looked
do have
like
a mentor.
Okay, I'll take that. Okay, let me ask you rather than tell you. Sorry, who are your mentors? But maybe were there other Black women photographers?
So no, but my mentor is actually a white woman photographer. Who is Maggie Stieber, and she is in her 70s, and she is a brilliant photojournalist. She has been to Haiti and all over the place. And so
like who is she? Where does she shoot? How did you meet her?
She has done, well, she lives in Miami now, so she's retired. But she has done Miami Herald, she has done New York Times, she has done Nat Geo, she is a Guggenheim Fellow. I can go on and on and on.
How did you get to meet her?
So the way that I met Maggie, I was shooting an event in Little Haiti. And so they were protesting about the immigration conditions and how Haitians were being treated. And so here is this older white woman who's really eccentric, right? And I'm taking a picture and she's over my shoulder and she's like, yeah, that looks great, but you should also try this. And I look back.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's funny.
And I look back and I'm like, who is she? Right? And I continue. And she pulls me aside and she was just like, I love to see women doing this work. And so we just began a conversation, and then from there, she has been my rock. Another mentor that I have is C.W. Griffin, who he's worked with like Gordon Parks and people like that. And so he has also really shaped me in this work that I do.
I mean, I still think it takes a lot to imagine yourself into a profession where there's not a lot of people who came before you.
Right.
And I mean, I think, we do so much mentorship at this conference as well. Like we do a lot of hands-on, and I think it's one of the things that young women in particular value the most because they are actively seeking models of people to show them that. So that's why when I always meet the Courage winners, often, especially in foreign countries, there aren't models for those women to follow, and it's very much an act of self-invention,
In some ways.
And I'd suggest in some ways it's the same in your case.
Yeah, I had to seek out Black women photographers to look into them and see the kind of work that they do.
I have worked with so many photographers. I was a foreign correspondent before I started my life at the Wrap.
Yeah.
And I've never worked with a Black photographer abroad. I have worked with Black photographers in the United States at the New York Times, and never with a Black woman photographer.
Wow.
I am old, so that's why. But I mean, so I think it's, and it also it makes you change your thinking because it's so clear that your perspective is going to be different and richer and more, just bring everything that you have to the story. We were talking earlier, you said that you were recently in Haiti. Do you have, are your parents from Haiti, or you have some?
My mother is from Haiti.
Okay.
And I went after the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse. And so,
which, by the way, sounds super dangerous. So, okay.
Yes, it is. And
there's no president. I think there's no parliament either.
Right.
The courts are in turmoil.
Yes.
But great time to go.
I know, right? So I went because I knew, similar to what happened last year, I knew that it was important. Oftentimes people parachute into Haiti and give a snippet of the reality, the lived reality of the Haitians on the ground. And so after the funeral, I knew that the country would be in chaos. And typically when you hear that Haiti is in chaos, it's not always necessarily true. It's not always the entire country. But in this case, the entire country is really in turmoil.
Have you been there before?
Yeah, I lived in Haiti after serving in the military for 7 years.
Okay.
And so I went to northern Haiti for the funeral of the president. And gangs were definitely in the streets, and there was active live shooting in the streets, and civil unrest. But the thing is, it's important to contextualize this, right? So when I got there in July, at the same time, gas was $10 US a gallon. So think about it. If it's that high, that means food is expensive, everything is expensive, right? And then there's no government. And it's just like this compounding effect that has created a perfect storm that is now what we're looking at Haiti.
I just can't get my head around you're going into the middle of a conflict zone without, honestly, the protection of a publication that's there, without a crew. You just go by yourself, just like
right?
you. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you and your camera.
Yeah.
And have you not felt in danger? I mean, you talked about in Ferguson how you did, but walking around Haiti?
Absolutely. I mean, luckily I speak the language, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that it keeps you safe.
Well, it used to be that when you were a journalist, it actually was some protection. But now it almost feels like being a journalist puts you more at risk.
Absolutely, because now you have a camera. And so,
and you see what they're doing.
Exactly. And you're going to broadcast it. And so it creates a very tumultuous situation. But luckily at the time, because my work has amassed a really solid following, when I was going down there, I was able to connect with other journalists. And so they sent me money to pay the journalists in Haiti. That were already... So the tribe, or the group of people that love my work, sent me funds to pay Haitian journalists that are on the ground doing the work. Wow. Yeah. It was
really?
Yes. I was able to pay each person $1,000.
Really?
Yeah. I'm forever grateful for them.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you're doing this and you're, somewhere and it's getting dark and you're trying to get, either get a shot or something, and maybe you feel like you're in a risky area. I mean, do you ever feel like I've gone too far? I've pushed farther than I ought to get a photo.
In Haiti, I did.
Yeah.
I definitely felt that way.
Yeah.
And that was the first time ever I felt like I really put myself in a very tumultuous situation or dangerous situation.
Yeah.
But with Iwmf, I'm a part of the next gen safety trainers. So I was able to use a lot of that situational awareness and different things like that to help me navigate, also with my military training. But Haiti
You don't carry a weapon or anything like that, do you?
No.
Besides a camera.
Exactly. But yeah, Haiti was very difficult, for sure.
Right.
Yeah. Definitely I went home that night and I was like, Vanessa, you're a mother. You have a kid that you need to go back home to. What are you doing right now? But I think that when you're a journalist, it's like this need that you can't shake it. You have to tell the story. You have to get it out. You have to incite conversation or thought. I don't know. It's like this. It's like something that's unquenchable. I just have to do it.
Well, then thank you for doing it, so that we don't have to, and we can see what the world see, what you see through your eyes.
Absolutely.
Vanessa Charlot, thank you so much for sharing your stories with us and sharing your work, and congratulations again on your Courage Award.
Thank you very much.
Wow, what an amazing day. We'll kick things off tomorrow morning with model, actress, and entrepreneur Alexis Rand. In the meantime, you can always go back and rewatch all of your favorite sessions from day 1 and day 2 on the Power Woman Summit website. Just go to rapwoman.com and click Power Woman Summit. Enjoy.